On the first Sunday of Advent, we celebrated the gift of hope through Christ.
On the second Sunday, we lit the candle of peace, recalling Jesus' teachings about peace and that he is the Prince of Peace.
Last Sunday, we lit the candle of joy. Christ, our joy, giver of joy.
Today, the fourth Sunday of Advent, we light the candle of love. Paul said that among spiritual gifts, love is the dearest, more prized than hope or faith.
In the New Testament, love is not principally an emotion, but a choice, a decision, a self-sacrificial, self-giving action on behalf of another.
Love is Christ washing his disciples' feet, advocating for the outcast, healing on the Sabbath, and defying the religious authorities. Ultimately, love is Christ on the cross. Love is costly.
Christ, our light, God's love made flesh.
So today we are on the topic of love. Such a simple word. And yet, like with hope, peace, and joy, there's always more than meets the eye. Love in English, what does love connote in your minds? Just the simple word love.
Positive emotional feeling.
Yeah.
Attraction towards something or someone.
Attraction, positive feeling,
Hugging.
hugging, physicality, absolutely. Affection. Affection.
Need. What's it need?
Need.
Comfort.
We're going to begin with one of those word studies like we did last week for joy. This is a word study about love in the Hebrew Bible and the New Testament. Note here that English is not our friend when it comes to the word love. Other languages have multiple words for love. English just has one, which leaves it a fuzzier, blurrier concept in English. In the New Testament, when it says love, you look at the particular meaning of the word love and you really know what it means from the word itself. So here we go. Love in the Bible.
So if you've heard of Jesus, you probably know about one of his famous teachings called the Golden Rule. Do to others what you would want them to do to you. And this, actually, is a restatement of something else that Jesus said, that the meaning of life is to love God and love your neighbor as yourself. Now, that's really beautiful, but what does he mean exactly by the word love? It's an unclear word in English, because you can love your mom and you can love pizza. And if the word love means the same thing in both of those cases, your mom's gonna feel real bad. So what did Jesus mean in his language? Well, first of all, this love your neighbor phrase is a quotation from the Hebrew scriptures, where the word for love is ahava. However, the language Jesus spoke and taught in from day to day, it was a cousin language of Hebrew, that is Aramaic, in which the word for love is rachma. But then, as Jesus' followers spread his teachings around the world, they translated them into Greek, using the word agape. But here's what's fascinating. The earliest followers of Jesus, who wrote the books of the New Testament in Greek, they didn't learn the meaning of agape by looking it up in ancient dictionaries. Rather, they looked to the teachings of Jesus and the story of his life to redefine their very concept of love. So one time, Jesus was asked about the most important command in the Jewish scriptures. And he first quoted from the ancient prayer in the Torah called the Shema. Love the Lord your God with all of your heart. So love for God is the most important thing. But then Jesus quickly followed up by saying another command from the Torah was also the most important, to love your neighbor as yourself. So which is the most important, loving God or loving your neighbor? Jesus' answer is yes. To ask the question means you don't get his point. For Jesus, they are two sides of the same coin. Your love for God will be expressed by your love for people, and vice versa, they're inseparable. And so this makes it clear that for Jesus, agape love is not primarily a feeling for someone else that happens to you, like our phrase, I fell in love. For Jesus, love is action. It's a choice that you make to seek the well-being of people other than yourself. Jesus also went on to teach that genuine love for God and others means seeking people's well-being without expecting anything in return, especially from people who are in difficult situations, who can't repay you even if they wanted to. According to Jesus, this kind of generous love reflects the very heartbeat of God. And he took this even further. Jesus said that the ultimate standard of authentic love is how well you treat the person that you can't stand. Or in his words, you shall love your enemy and do good to them, expecting nothing in return. For Jesus, this kind of enemy-embracing love imitates the very character of God himself. Now, we wouldn't be talking about Jesus still today if he had only said things like love your enemy. This is how he actually lived. Jesus was constantly helping and serving the people around him in very practical and tangible ways. And he consistently moved towards poor and hurting people who couldn't benefit him in return. He showed love for the forgotten ones, the people who usually fall through the cracks. And when Jesus eventually marched into Jerusalem, he made himself an enemy of the leaders of his people by accusing them of hypocrisy and corruption. But then instead of attacking his enemies to overthrow them, he allowed them to kill him. Jesus died for the selfishness and corruption of his enemies because he loved them. After Easter morning, Jesus and then his followers claimed that it was the power of God's love for the world that was revealed in Jesus' life, death, and resurrection. As the Apostle Paul put it, God demonstrated his own agape for us in this: while we were still sinners, the Messiah died for us. Or in the words of the Apostle John, God's own agape was revealed when he sent his one and only Son into the world so that through him we could have life. And for John, then, this leads naturally to the conclusion, beloved ones, if that's how God has loved us, then we ought to show love for one another. So Christian faith involves trusting that at the center of the universe is a being overflowing with love for his world, which means that the purpose of human existence is to receive this love that has come to us in Jesus and then to give it back out to others, creating an ecosystem of others-focused, self-giving love. And that's the New Testament meaning of agape love.
So that was pretty clear, I think. What did you get out of it? When the New Testament speaks of love, what specifically is meant by that unique word agape?
I'm reminded of a song, "Love is a many splendored thing," because I got a lot of different meanings of love out of that. But I think it's centralized on the central theme of the overriding concept of the integrated whole, and that you're part of it, and your job is to treat others as you would have them treat you and make the world a better place. But that involves so many different meanings of the word love.
Is
In
it?
this-
Go ahead.
Sorry, in this understanding, love becomes an action rather than, as they said, an emotion. And I think the other thing that struck me is the definition of love is a choice to perform a certain action.
What about commitment? Oh, and is it a one-time commitment? A daily commitment? A moment-by-moment commitment?
It's hard forever.
It's what?
It's hard.
It's hard. It's hard. It's hard. So love is risky. Love is about self-sacrifice, self-giving, giving without expectation of anything. Love's value is in its doing, not in what you get back.
It involves empathy, however. If you have no sense of appreciation of another's feelings, you cannot love.
This is a good point, Lois. I learned a long time ago that there's something even better than the golden rule. Yes, Joe.
Well, we're waiting.
We're sitting on the edge of our seat.
What's even stronger than gold?
What's what?
Stronger than gold.
Platinum.
Platinum! I learned a long time ago the platinum rule. Not do unto others as you would want them to do unto you. Do unto others as they want to be done to. And that requires empathy, requires entering into the mind, heart, the life situation of the other person. And not saying, when we go to Africa as a missionary, I think you need a well here. But rather asking them, what do you need? It may be a well, it may be electricity, it may be a church. You don't know another person's needs and wants until you ask them. Or have maybe intrinsic sense of what they wish for, but that's only because of a relationship.
But there's a tricky aspect of it. There is a psychological, and I wouldn't use the word illness, but people who called characters are sort of people who are incapable, either by training or birth or the way their lives work, that they can't empathize.
Right.
And we recognize there are people in the world who are like that.
Yes, they're called sociopaths.
Yeah.
Right.
And we know
But
very well.
there's very few sociopaths in the world. But some people struggle more with empathy than others, clearly, right?
Well, there must be a spectrum also.
There's a spectrum.
Sure.
But that suggests that maybe empathy is something that can be developed. Maybe. Another topic for another day, but this is definitely related.
Reading literature helps.
Say more about how reading literature helps develop.
Well, because it puts you in certain cases, the minds and thoughts of other people that you may not otherwise have in your own realm exposure to. It helps you understand the human condition in a variety of ways better. And in expanding that knowledge, the idea is that through that understanding, you come to develop an empathy that you may not have had the chance to experience otherwise.
Yeah, some things in life can only be understood from the inside out. That is, being part of a social group, sort of putting yourself in a social group. There was a program again on NPR's Hidden Brain this morning at 7 o'clock with Shankar Vedantam, our listening companion as we drive to Page County. And he was talking to a psychologist about ritual. To outsiders, the ritual of certain groups, and it could be a religious ritual, or it could be a football, soccer ritual, they looks like they make no sense, they're a waste of time. But to an insider, they are life-giving. They help you identify as a member of the group. They also give you a sense of calm and purpose and meaning because they are repetitive and they build personal and social identity. So you can only understand somebody else's ritual widely. Maybe it's a family that gathers and they always circle the Christmas tree 7 times. Whatever it is. Or they eat some horrible food that in grandma's memory. I don't know, whatever it is, it just makes no sense to the outsider, but you need to get inside the mind of the community. Yeah, so much
Seems to me one aspect of that is really having a mindset of everybody being connected. Of being about there is this connection that we have, and really building on that connection that we have, that everything, that we're all interrelated and we're all connected to one another. And if we can have that mindset, I think it makes it somewhat easier. I mean, it's still difficult.
Yeah,
But
and Jesus' teachings, again, he picked these 2 scriptures from the Hebrew Bible, love God and love neighbor. He put them together as one because Jesus and other teachers of his time and between the time the Hebrew Bible was written and Jesus' time, and many teachers since have seen that these are inextricable. Love of God and love of neighbor always go together.
we're always
But-
tied, no matter what.
But this comes from a larger cosmic vision, really, that everything is one. Good point.
There's a simple phrase these days, love is something you do, a sort of contemporary version of that thought.
Yes, sir. If anybody on, online has a comment, please feel free at any time to unmute yourself and speak up. I would also like to add the concept that agape love is boundary crossing. It's being willing to cross over what you're familiar with, comfortable with, your own worldview, and enter generously, respectfully, compassionately into somebody else's space. Physical space, possibly, but more about their social space, psychological, spiritual space, with respect, with openness, generous heart and mind. Boundary crossing, being willing to visit a prison, for example, to use Jesus' words again, is a boundary crossing, right? That is love in action. Visiting the old curmudgeon in the hospital. It's easy to visit the friendly person in the hospital, but the complainer, the person who you know is going to take your good deed and somehow turn it against you. That's love. I have the next video from, this is Norman Wiersbe. He's a teacher of theology at Duke. And the name of this video is The Way of Love.
Love makes the world. Love heals the world. Love makes life beautiful. And if you don't have love, everything goes wrong. And Christianity matters because it's all about teaching us what love looks like. And it's the place where we go to school. Church is like school where you learn how to love. Yeah, it's a love school, right? And it's the place where you learn to eat and enjoy good food and good fellowship.
Where's this church?
It exists in a few places, right? But you know, that's what it's about. It's about bringing people back to love, helping people see how love is easily screwed up, but then also helping people see that when love goes right, everything is changed.
Where have you seen love go right?
All over the place. I mean, it happens in our family from time to time. It happens in our marriages.
What news program was that on?
It's not on there. I mean, the news is bad news. I mean, they ought to stop calling it the news. They should just call it bad news because that's all they want to give you, right? And they want to depress you about how everything is going so badly. And we just don't get coverage on the stuff that's really good and beautiful. Right? And there's plenty of that. And a lot of it happens in churches. A lot of it doesn't happen in churches. But sometimes churches get it really right. And when that happens, it's beautiful.
What does that resurrection look like?
Resurrection is a community of people in their places living life in its fullness. Right? It's Jesus saying, I have come to give life abundantly. It's the prophet Amos saying, there will come a day when you will grow your gardens, you will build your houses, you will have your families, and you'll be able to enjoy them without fear. That's what it's all about. It's not about escaping the world. It's not about escaping your troubles. It's about healing the troubles so that where you are can be a place of joy and peace and delight. It's no more loneliness. It's no more anxiety. It's no more alienation, right? It's the healing of all of our pain so that we can fully live. Right? It's pain that prevents us from living. And there are many, many sources of our pain. And so if you want to talk about resurrection, you talk about the healing of pain. And if you want to become agents of this resurrection power that God wants to give us, you figure out where the pain is and you figure out what you need to do to heal it. That's what you're doing.
What pains has love healed in you?
Say that.
What pains has love healed in you?
Oh, I mean, just the pain of loneliness, right? I mean, think about how easy it is, even though you can be surrounded by all kinds of people, how easy it is to be lonely. Well, what love says is, it's not good for you to be lonely. Because when you're lonely, you start to think about, well, nobody cares about me, the work I do doesn't matter, right? That's a hard way to live. But when you realize that, no, other people love you, and other people think you matter, and people think the work you do matters, that inspires you. It lifts you up. It makes you want to get up in the morning. It makes you want to share with others, right? So love is this transformative power that changes things from loneliness to companionship, right? From illness to health, from sadness to joy. I mean, all these different things.
What's your strategy for love?
Strategy? I don't know that there's a strategy, right? It'd be nice if there could be this sort of formula, you know, tick the box and you get it, right?
We do all kinds of strategy for our 401k, and we got
Right.
strategy for, these things, but nobody, if love is this main thing, you look at all these other things that we spend our life making sure we've got strategies
Yeah.
and plans for.
Yeah. I mean, I think if you want to put it in terms of a strategy, I mean, a way you start is just say, figure out what Jesus is doing and then see how you can do the same thing. That's the strategy. So go read the Bible, and go read the Bible with other people, and go read the Bible in places that people are actually living in. So go into a restaurant and read the Bible maybe with somebody else and say, what's going on here at our table right now or in this whole restaurant that either witnesses to love or doesn't? And see, well, you look over at that table and there's a couple, they don't even talk to each other. They don't know what to say to each other. Well, maybe that means then that we got to start figuring out why marriages are often lonely places. You know, that's sort of taking the gospel as a manual for love into the varying practical circumstances of daily life and saying, how do we make changes? Because people are living, but they're not living. Right? And to help people see that, and then to help them figure out the changes they need to make so that they can start to live. You know, that's like one-on-one kind of work. It's not just a big campaign. You got to get close and personal.
What is God doing?
Well, I think the thing that God is up to from the beginning and every day is nurturing life. Right? That's why this idea of God as being far, far away has been so destructive. God is constantly present to all of us as the power of love nurturing us in our lives. So that, as the psalmist says, if God were to turn God's face away, everything would die. And so one of the things that, I want to tell colleagues is, when you eat, when you shake hands with somebody, when you wake up in the morning, what's letting you do any of that? Right? You can't do it yourself. You didn't bring your own life into existence. Right? Everything's a gift. And the hard thing is to learn to receive the world and each other as gifts. And that's another thing that the church does. Besides being a school for the training of love, the church is a school for the training of gratitude, right? Teach us how do we receive the world. And that means, this posture, not this posture, right? So if we could get people just to move from this to this, that'd be huge.
Did that video by Norman Wiersbe stir anything in you positively or not? Anything confounding in there? Anything new?
Very straightforward.
I was thinking about that little girl walking across the grass so free. And how many of us really feel that kind of freedom to just be ourselves and comfortable with where we are and just enjoy every minute. I want to be that little girl.
Yeah, taking off on that, to me, it means we just have to work at being loved and accepting the gifts, as he said, that have been bestowed upon us. Wake up in the morning and whatever you're doing, and think about the gifts that you have and appreciate them. And it's a constant effort to do that.
It is an effort. It is work. And Protestants are a little allergic to that concept because we've been taught the most important Protestant concept is grace. Everything's a gift. We don't achieve or earn God's favor, right? Does that sound very Martin Luther-y or Calvin-y? It should. And yet, spirituality is a discipline. Some effort is required. And I've found in the last 5+ years, as I've turned my life to a more spiritual center, or I'm attempting to, that a daily practice is essential. It's really not optional, at least for me. Now, there's a million kinds of daily practices. And yet, one sometimes needs to choose it rather than all these other things that are calling for your time and attention. So some effort is required. The morning practice that Paul alluded to is a great one. Just kind of looking at your day, being quiet, turning everything off, being quiet, looking ahead to your day, thinking, where might I encounter grace today? Or as the Jesuits, is it Jesuits? Yeah, Jesuits taught a practice called examine, which can be done at the beginning of the day, looking at the day before, or at the end of the day, looking back at that day, and just looking for occasions of transcendence, illumination, insight, grace, forgiveness, kind of enumerating them, like, oh, that's right, I saw so-and-so today, that was really great. So, go see a spiritual director if you'd like. I know a lot of them who could work with you to help you develop a daily practice to build that gratitude and love. Anybody online want to make a comment? Yes, Jess.
It's a minor issue for me, but I don't equate effort with practice.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes, I have a daily practice. I do not consider it an effort because it flows naturally. And it becomes, because it's natural, it's not an effort. And I would also say to, I guess it was Carol, if you want to become that girl, that little girl, was it Carol?
Yeah,
Yes.
that's me.
Yeah, just be it. Just be her right now.
Hey, get down on the floor. And
Yeah. Run around the yard.
Yeah, I mean, why not? Just be her. If you don't want to do the physical things, then just right now, sink into the attitude, the mindset, the emotions that little girl is feeling right now.
Good,
And
thank you.
just be it.
I was also thinking about one of the things he said, is that we often think that we are not loved, or we are lonely, or nobody cares about us, or whatever. And I think that in the same way, JS, I think we have to kind of turn our heads around and not get into that negative feeling and kind of get into that negative cycle, but try to get our head into a positive cycle of, yes, indeed, we are loved. We were loved from the beginning, and let our actions come out of that way of thinking, rather than trying to be defensive and saying, I'm not loved, I'm not cared about, that person did that to me, so on and so forth, and then withdraw. And it's so we have to do the opposite of that. We have to engage. We have to put our minds at the point in time, or in a way that we can open up ourselves to other people because we are loved.
Thank you all. Rich conversation, much appreciated. I'd like us to move to the next video, which is from Brene Brown. She again is a FOO, friend of Oprah, and professor at University of Houston. Her specific interest is in shame. As a psychologist, the power of shame to really break down our personality, break down in not a good way, and the need to address that constructively. But she's also a Christian and has a lot to say about how Jesus is embodied love from a Christian perspective. She look familiar?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Last week you saw
from
her.
last week. Oprah is not in this video.
Jesus makes complete sense to me.
Why?
Because this is my whole thing. I believe God is love. It's that simple and that complicated. And so if you tried to express love to human beings and just came down and said, I am love, love each other, we automatically, because we're so afraid of hard things, we would automatically go to like unicorns and rainbows. And so you would have to send someone to show what love in the flesh looked like. You would have to send, what does love look like? And so otherwise we would romanticize it. We would turn it, we would make it easy, because that's who we are as people. We're gonna make it easy. And so then Jesus comes and says, okay, I am love. I sit with the people you're not allowed to talk to. I do all the hard things. I make all the hard choices. I love the people that are unlovable. I feed the people who are not supposed to be taken care of. I don't tolerate shame. I don't tolerate attacks. Like, I'm love, and it's hard and messy and dirty. And if you really love, I mean fierce, big love, you'll become dangerous to people. And so there's no way that most of us could have understood what love was without seeing what love looked like. So to me, it makes perfect sense. And so God is love, and Jesus is what love looks like made flesh. And it's hard, and it's not the default, and it has nothing to do with rainbows and unicorns and fluffy stuffed animals. It's about choosing what's right over what's easy. And we don't want love to be that.
Choosing what's right over what's easy. Another definition of love. This is the third reference to Jesus washing the disciples' feet as the definitive act of love. And I so appreciate Jeff bringing to my practice for Monday, Thursday, of physical foot washing, which I always thought was pretty disgusting. And every Monday, Thursday, I was thinking, oh, I hope he chooses the other pastor. Because I still think it's disgusting. And that's the point. And there's a hymn, I think it's from Ghana. There's a hymn for the foot washing. It's in the United Church of Christ hymnal. Just a lovely Ghanaian tune. And there's a phrase there. It says, loving puts us on our knees.
Interesting.
So I thought about this beforehand, sung it.
Thinking of worship feet, I guess my question is it harder to be the one that washes, or is it harder to accept your feet being washed?
Ooh,
Good question.
Yeah, for some people, receiving gifts of love, any gift, is harder.
Very hard.
Than
Yeah.
giving. Giving a gift, say a gift of love, an expression of love, puts one in kind of a position of power and puts the other person in a lesser position. So I think this issue of giving and receiving, the mutuality of relationships, is a very important one. As a missionary in Africa, I can tell you that there's 100+ years of pattern of white people coming from North America and Europe, handing things out.
They consider that demeaning.
Well, I don't know that they consider it, but it becomes a pattern of, what's the right word? Patronizing,
It's condescending.
condescending.
And what you said, the difference between the golden rule and the platinum rule, because I'll give you this because it's what I would have wanted, but how did you not even do the research and do the hard work and use your moral imagination to find out what they really wanted in the first place?
And is the giver, the traditional giver role, willing to set that traditional giver role aside and receive? The gifts of African Christians are many. They may not always be physical, but they are many. And they have so much to teach Christians in North America and Europe, Australia, and so on. That's just one example of letting aside one's need to give so that one can receive. When you're receiving, you're recognizing your need. Who said need at the very beginning? The need for love. We need to receive love as much as we need to give it. So that's a great point, Paul. Thank you for bringing that up. Anybody on Zoom have a thought, question?
I have a little bit of a beef with her. I don't want it to be unicorns, love to be unicorns and stuffed animals. Why not? Why is it so terrible to love your imagination and what your imagination can create? Does that preclude you from washing other people's feet? No. Anyway, that's my rant.
No, understood. I guess she was trying to say something, don't expect a Hollywood ending.
I think it's a variety of different things. I think yes, you can use your imagination, but I think also, as Jeffrey said, sometimes you have to do the hard stuff and you have to really face it. I remember a long time ago, I had a discussion with a friend about the idea of accepting something from other people. And I was having difficulty with it. And she said, if you accept something from other people, that you're giving them a gift, accepting what they have given you. And that really helped me a lot.
It was in a Karen Calling context, because you have told me this story before, right?
Yeah.
Or yes, that's right. JS in our training, Karen Calling training, we have made mention of that. That when we present ourselves as Karen Calling ministers or pastors at someone's bedside in someone's home, and they want to offer us tea, cookies, whatever it is, we are giving them the gift of allowing them to be in the role of host. And maybe they haven't had that opportunity for a long time, and it makes them feel so good to play the role of host. Right? Is that what we're talking about? Yes, Jane?
I had a life-changing experience like that one time when I was in 8th grade. My best friend had cancer, and I went to visit her in the hospital. And she had been given some candy, and I said, "Oh, no, it's for you." She said, "You take it. It's my gift to you." And that was life-changing. That's about giving and receiving. It was much easier.
And I've learned as a pastor, I mean, you get lots of cookies at Christmas. By the way, there's still time. You may not need one more cookie. This is this is how they're communicating love to you. And if you say, my freezer's really full. Can't you like, don't you need to no, you receive it graciously because this is what being a human is all about, giving and receiving. The foot washing is only in John's gospel. And it very clearly happens. By the way, there's no Last Supper in John's gospel. There is in Matthew, Mark, and Luke, but not John. The foot washing really kind of takes the place of the Eucharist, the Lord's Supper. And so some churches do the foot washing on Maundy, Thursday, in addition to the Eucharist, communion, because it is so fundamentally expressive of the nature of love. And in John's gospel, Jesus goes on to say, because the disciples don't want him to wash their feet. Remember, that's part of the story. And he says, no. Peter says, okay, go ahead and wash my feet and all of me. And Jesus says, basically, as I have served you, you should serve one another. As I have loved you, you should love one another. These are Jesus' almost last words in John's gospel before Good Friday, when I think he shows ultimately what love is about, the willingness to give all. But the foot washing is a prelude, an appetizer, a figuration of the death on the cross in John's gospel. Just as the giving and the breaking and the receiving and the taking of the bread and the cup are expressions of Good Friday, the death of Jesus in the other three gospels.
In Africa, it's more of a humility.
Yes.
Because people who are, Jesus was seen as a teacher and everybody put him on a pedestal. Mm-hmm. And that's why they were reluctant in him accepting a feet wash from him. And he said no. So if he is able to do that to you, then you should be also fulfill it, And that's how Africans see it. Because when you are of a caliber, you get to a level, you can afford certain things. You can command anything and everything for people to do for you. So at some point, you should also, if you really, really want to show love, then you should come down and be able to do it.
So it's a reversal of powers, reversal of social status or whatever.
So, for example, they say something like a royal, we have subordinates in what they call in the palace. So the subordinates are to be respected for them to honor the royal. Right? If you don't respect your subordinate and they don't honor you, right? It's the same.
I've got a video. Does anyone online have a comment before we move ahead? I've got a video here by Ilia Delio, a Franciscan sister who teaches theology at Villanova and carries on the work of Pierre Teilhard de Chardin in combining science and religion and evolution in religion. Both of them see love as the key aspect of that love is always growing. I've got that, and I really want to show a closer by Becca Stevens, who was here at WCC about 3 years ago.
In the end, it is love that matters. All else will pass away. We need a thoughtful love, a wisdom that sees and knows more deeply, a faith that trusts in the power of God who lives beneath our wings. Ours is the age of something radically new. It is more than a reformation. It is an evolution in love. It is not simply we humans who are in evolution, but God seeks to evolve, to become more being in love, more conscious, more God at the heart of the universe. This is the truth that sets us free, the light that eludes our sight. We are the privileged bearers of transcendence. God cannot do for us what we must do for ourselves. Empty our lives of the inner clutter and noise so that we may welcome God within. Only when we allow God to be God for us can God save us. Because divine love can do no other than make whole. God's love is unmanageable and unruly. It is creative, spontaneous, and novel. It slips in between our controlling urges and dwells in the unbearable wholeness of our being. What a cunning God this is, who hides in lepers and appears in a poor man carpenter turned preacher. Divine love is beyond what the human mind can imagine or invent. It is not logical or predictable. It has empowered life from the beginning and promises to stay forever because love is ever new, ever more whole, deepening the rich creativity of life's playfulness. We all have a part in this unfolding love. We are all wholes within wholes, persons within persons, religions within religions. We are one body, and we seek one mind and heart, more personal and unified in love. This urging toward oneness is an invitation to evolve the divine. We must unfold the past into the quantum moment, and let us aim toward the future. For up ahead is the Christ, rising from the dead in the darkness of night, to become for us the God of the future.
Quick comment before we move on. And again, Elia Delio is the inheritor of the work of the Jesuit priest and paleontologist Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, who died in 1955 and was, I think, the first Catholic theologian to fully embrace evolution as fact and as the way of the universe. And as the universe is unfolding, God is unfolding, love is unfolding, always seeking a new way to relate. It's a beautiful set of theology. If you haven't heard about Teilhard de Chardin, yeah, so many books are out there by him and about him. But she continues his work today at Villanova, bringing science and religion together. So here's our closer by Becca Stevens. On our coffee table, one of them at home, is this book by her, Love Heals. She was here at WCC. Dr. Bill Fry brought her to WCC in 2018 or 19, way back when. She's the founder, she's an Episcopal priest. She's the founder of Thistle Farms in Nashville. It's a home for women to live independently as they recover from addiction, prostitution, and regain dignity and financial self-sustaining practices. So this is Becca Stevens talking about, the title is Love Made Flesh. No, sorry, that was Brene Brown's. Love gets the last word. That'll be our last word here. By the way, Becca Stevens was a CNN maybe you know this about her. She was a 2016 CNN hero, and she was named a champion of change and a humanitarian of the year by the White House. I don't know who was president at that time.
What?
You know, I've known death my whole life. I mean, my first memory is my father's death. And so I've always been scared and drawn to death. Both those things completely. And it is the grounding of my relationship to God, to love, is this idea that it's all very tenuous and can slip away. And it's very precious and beautiful. But I do not have a problem like grieving fully and believing that love lives beyond it. I buried so many people over the years. I buried Jane Doe's, I buried my sister, I buried my mother and father, I buried my husband's parents, buried women who were graduates, women, you know, chained to a hospital bed because they're in state custody with a feeding tube still in them. And always, even in death, I can feel love. Always. I've never.
That doesn't put it out?
It doesn't. No. It's like the opposite. It's like, oh my gosh, love still speaks. And I still feel it. And I still feel like, you know, if I get to see some of the worst stuff the world has to offer, you know, through the racism, through the poverty, through the addiction, through the abuse, and still feel love speaking in those deaths, and it's like, I will take this work because I want to feel love like that. I want to feel love that powerful. You know,
It's head on.
it's head on, and it's not hippie. That's what I'm really trying to say. It's so not hippie. It's not like I want to go get stoned out in a field and not do something. I want to work really, really hard for what I believe in. And I don't believe as much as I used to believe. I mean, you can tell that through the questions probably. It's like, I probably believe less now than when I was ordained.
What do you believe?
25, 26 years ago.
Carved away.
But here's what I think. So, I mean, all those things that I've let go, you know, I mean, I mumble through much of the creed, if that gives you an example. But what I'm left believing, it's like I believe with my whole heart and I will die for it.
What do you believe in your whole heart?
I believe in my whole heart that love gets the last word. I believe that if we spent our whole life trying to love the world better and quit trying to just change it, just quit trying to change everybody else, but just love and be willing to change so we could love better, that our lives would be much better. And that we do it every single day by how we practice. It's not something you say like, oh, I would like to be more loving later. It's like, no, what are you going to do today? What little tiny thing? Think big, do some kind of small action to make us more loving. That's,
How
oh my
far
gosh.
does love go?
Love, how far does love go? I keep thinking that love goes as far as it needs to. It doesn't go a lot farther than that, but it goes there all the time. So like if, for us, we're practicing love, if we're not inspired, we still go love. If we're pissed, we still go love. If we're disappointed, we still go love. If we're really happy, we still go love. You know, but that it is about, it's not really a feeling. It is really a commitment to how we experience and live in our world.
But what I take away from there is a number of things. One is though, that love doesn't mean going out and changing people, but being willing to be changed. Thank you all for this 2022 year in spiritual enrichment. We will not meet again until Sunday, January 8th. And our presenter that day is the vice chair of our congregation, Julie McConnell, who's going to share with us from her experiences from a week's conference at the Kellogg School of Management at Northwestern about the future of the church, sort of in the post-pandemic era of